So this is part 3, and we're going through is choice and free will an explanation or is it a label, right? So we went through this in part 1 and part 2, right? And I was a guest on Cooley's show, No Fugazi podcast, and I asked where did the desire of sin came from in Lucifer, right? And his explanation is choice and free will, right? And my explanation is we don't know. But I do have a theory. Now, if that theory is done in part 3, maybe it won't be. We'll go to part 4, right? Because I have things in order, and sometimes I don't want to go past a certain minute, a certain minutes, because then it'll be over too much, right? So I just said, let me just go to like 30 minutes tops, right? And then I'll make a part 4, or I'll make a part 5. When I get to my theory, I get to my theory. But at the end of the day, it's all about people feeling that choice and free will is the explanation for evil, unexplained evil, right? In the beginning of Genesis, it's unexplained evil, and it's unexplained evil in the heavens with Lucifer, right? But if you're saying choice and free will, then hey, that's your opinion. I'm saying it's unexplained, and we don't have the answers. But people that think they do have the answers, like my brother right now, he said that, no, I do have the answers. And I'm not going to put that in this video that he said that. You could just watch part 1 and part 2. Don't take my word for it. Take his word for it, right? And this one, Cooley, the host of the show of No Fugazi podcast, he explains some free will and choices, right? Because that's all we could work on right now is choice and free will. That's what we can work on, because at the end of the day, we have a choice and we have free will to go in any direction we want to. So he's going to give you some explanations. But before we get to that, I'm going to give you again, and I did it in part 1, I'm doing it in part 2, and I'm doing it in part 3. And the reason why I'm doing it in part 3, because some people don't watch part 1, part 2, and they'll see part 3. And if I don't explain myself right, which I can't explain myself that good, I don't have the best grammar, I'm going to give you some footage, like I did in part 1 and part 2, of where I am coming from about label and explanation of choice and goodwill. And it's not an explanation, it's a label. So let's go on. Let me show you where I stand. Listen to it. And then we'll move on with the podcast with Cooley and myself. Let's roll it.
Jonathan Edwards, who claims that, number 1, free will is doing what we desire, but that 2, God gives us the desire to do good. And with that being said, and keeping James 1:13 in mind, I'm having trouble understanding where Lucifer received his first desire for sin. Norman Geisler says, quote, "The unmistakable logical conclusion for the extreme Calvinist is that both Lucifer and Adam sinned because God gave them the desire to sin first," end quote. I would imagine that Adam received his desire to sin from Eve, who received it from the serpent, from Satan. But if God is sovereign over all things, including all of our desires, would that make him the initial author of the first desire for sin in Satan? How do you answer this mystery?
For as many years as I can remember, I have said that among the mysteries in my theology, for which I do not have an adequate answer, one of them is the question, how? How is key word here. How did the first sin come about? And by first sin, I don't mean Adam's first sin. I mean Satan's first sin, the very first sin in the universe. The Bible opens not with the beginning of evil, but with the presence of unexplained evil. Man is created innocent, and the serpent is already there, deceitful, manifestly opposed to the God of creation. And that's where the Bible begins. And as far as I can see, no explanation is offered in the Bible for how Satan became evil. I know there are hints that he was a perfect angel, created by God. Jude says that he refers to angels who did not stay within their own position of authority, but left their proper dwelling, whom God has kept in eternal chains under gloomy darkness until the judgment of the great day. And I don't doubt that Satan was created good and fell from his proper place, like Jude says, because I don't think that evil and God are both eternal and ultimate realities. I'm not a dualist. God and his goodness and wisdom and power are the only ultimate eternal realities. And thus evil is somehow derivative, secondary, without God being a sinner. And all of that, virtually all Christians agree on. But how did Satan become evil? I do not know. And it is plain to me that those who believe in ultimate self-determination of God's creatures, like angels and humans, don't know either. To say that Satan had free will, that is ultimate self-determination, to say that Satan had free will is not an explanation for why he committed his first sin. It's a label. It's a label. It's not an explanation. It's a label of a mystery. How could a perfectly good being with a perfectly good will and a perfectly good heart ever experience any imperfect impulse that would cause the will to move in the direction of sin? And the answer is nobody knows, including those who say, oh, it's free will. That's not an explanation. It's a name for a mystery. So we don't know. The Bible doesn't explain the how of it. So Rob quotes Norman Geisler, who says, the unmistakable logical conclusion for the extreme Calvinist, for both Lucifer and Adam, that they sinned is because God gave them the desire to sin. Now, I'm not sure whether I qualify for Geisler's extreme Calvinist, but I strongly suspect that I do. But just at this point, I am disagreeing with that description of me, and I am saying, no, I am not driven to say God gave Lucifer his first desire to sin. That is an oversimplification of virtually everybody's viewpoint. I do not know how Lucifer came to feel his first inclination to rebel against God. But here is what I do know. God is indeed sovereign, and nothing comes to pass apart from his plan, which includes things he more or less causes directly and things he more or less permits indirectly. And there is no doubt in my mind that Satan's fall and all of the redemptive plan of God for the glory of his grace afterwards was according to God's eternal plan. But it is precisely at this point that the how of the causality of Satan's first sin worked, we do not know. I have a category in my thinking, in other words, for the fact that God can see to it that something come to pass which he hates. This is what he did, for example, when he planned the crucifixion of Jesus, according to Acts 4:27 and 4:28. The murder of Jesus was sinful, and it was planned down to the detail by God. You can read it in the Psalms, and you can read it in the New Testament. Precisely how God does that, maintaining his sinlessness, and the sin of the things that comes about, and the moral accountability of those who do those sins. The how of that, I do not know. But I think the Bible leads us to believe that he is sovereign over all sin, and that he never sins. That is what I believe the Bible teaches. Now, how he does it, there might be hints in the Bible. And I am going to give you one pointer. And I do not claim this is an explanation, but it's worth thinking about as a pointer toward a possible explanation that maybe we'll understand someday. In Isaiah 63:17, the prophet cries out to the people, "O Lord, why do you make us wander from your ways?" Did you hear that? "Oh Lord, why do you make us wander from your ways and harden our heart so that we fear you not? Return for the sake of your servants, the tribes of your heritage." And so he ascribes to God the ultimate causality, somehow, of our wandering, Israel's wandering into sin. How did God do that? The second half of the verse says, "Return for the sake of your servants," suggesting, pointing that somehow God's absence did it. And then he says in Isaiah 64:7, this is what, 7 or 8 verses later, "There is no one here who calls upon your name, who rouses himself to take hold of you. For you have hidden your face from us and have made us melt in the hand of our iniquities." And so again, it's the hiding of his face that explains the sin. And I'm not saying this is a foolproof explanation of sin, like somehow God cloaked his glory from Lucifer, and in the cloaking of his glory, somehow, still inexplicable to me, there rises a preference in Lucifer's heart for himself over God, who has cloaked his glory. I don't know how that happens, but this is a pointer that something like that might have been going on. I'm simply saying this is worth pondering, that God may be able to govern the presence and absence of sin, not by direct active agency, but by concealing himself. I think it was Edwards who said, there's a difference between the way light is caused at 3 o'clock in the afternoon by the shining of the sun, and the way the shadows are caused by the blocking of that sun by the tree, though it is the light of the sun that is responsible for both the brightness of the day and the shadows under the tree. But I end where I began. How the very first sin in the universe came about is a mystery to me. I do not know how. What I am taught in the Bible is that God is sovereign over all things, including sin, and he himself is never a sinner.
That's very perceptive. And again, those passages are Isaiah 63, verse 17, and Isaiah 64, verse 7. I'm certainly going to look at those passages more carefully myself. Thank you, Pastor John.
Okay, so now you can understand where I'm coming from, that choice and free will is a label. It's not an explanation, right? But people that's conditioned to use this argument that choice and free will is an explanation for evil, I can never understand these people, right? I can never understand, but sometimes it's something that's conditioned, okay? So I don't get mad, right? But sometimes it's like hitting my head against the wall, trying to ask a question like that. And people say, well, choice and free will is explains the existence of evil. And I'm like, okay, cool, whatever. Part 2, I ended where I'm asking Cooley a question. So I'm going to put it, the ending of part 2 in the beginning of part 3 now, right? But we have explanations right here. We know that Lucifer, who became Satan, right? He begilded Eve and Adam, right? That's a fact, right? If you believe in the faith of Christians, right? If that's what you believe in, right? So we going on that faith. We're not going on any other faith. Now, if it's in this video, or maybe part 4, or maybe part 5, I do have a clip of a woman with Islam faith, right? And she was speaking about Shaitan, right? And how his existence and everything. But at the end of the day, the Muslim and the Christian went against me and saying that I'm giving Shaitan or Lucifer all the power. And I'm trying to explain to them, well, how can I give them all the power if I'm trying to tell you God has nothing to do with evil, and he's sovereign at all times? Because I grew up to say God is good, what? All the time, right? So this is what I'm saying, but they're saying, well, I'm giving Lucifer, Shaitan the power on how I'm trying to explain things. So I'm going to leave it up to you, the viewers, to understand where I'm coming from and where they're coming from. Right or wrong or right, doesn't matter, right? I'm just showing you an opinion. If you're aligned with it, if you're aligned with it. If you're not, then hey, you're not. It is what it is. It's free will and choice, right? So let's move along. And we already know that Adam and Eve been begilded by Satan. But we never understand what begilded Lucifer, right? A being, a cherub that God created. And I'm saying, whatever God created, nothing can override. And people are saying, well, God made Lucifer, right? And Lucifer had this inner feeling with him, right? An inner feeling of envy and pride. And he is the beginning of those feelings. And I say, there's no way anything could override God creation, but only if it's begilded. That's my philosophy, but I'll get to that some other time, okay? Because it's just a theory, and my theory is just a theory. Remember, theory is not a fact. It's just a theory, is something you put out there. It could be false, it could be true, but I know one thing that is true. We don't know, and that's where I stand. I don't stand on the other side that people say evil is because of choice and free will. That's not where I stand. So let's move on, and let's get the ending of part 2 and the beginning of part 3. Let's go.
Two things. It's either God created Lucifer to become Satan and cause this, or he has nothing to do with it. And it's the way I say it. He has nothing to do with it. So I'm not limiting God. He is God, but there's no answer. And the only answer to this, the true answer, is we don't know. But I feel, my theory, that something begilded Satan. Something begilded him. But it's not stronger than God. God, he can't create and he can't destroy. But he could put these feelings in you, these emotions of envy and hate and pride. And that's what Lucifer had. He had pride because he was the most beautiful angel, musical, beautiful.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I get what you're saying. Like think about what I just said, right? Eve made the serpent her God. Adam made Eve his God. Who you listen to, who you let influence you, you make them your God. Like there's many people on the stream right now. I'm sure their God is weed. All they do is wake up in the morning and they wake and bake, they smoke. I'm sure their God is weed. I'm sure their God is a little corn, but replace the C with a P. All they are is masturbating and wanking off all the time. So people make a lot of vices their God, right? So what I'm saying is, Lucifer, he just made other things his God besides the one true God. And human beings are flawed, and angels as well. So the only true perfect entity in being is God, because he always chooses good. This is why he's good all the time. But human beings, right, and angels, well, we're not good all the time. Well, we can be. That's the thing, because God gave us choice. So in free will, so it's like, well, you can be just like me. You can be good all the time, but let's see if you have the discipline to really be good. Let's see if you can really make those sacrifices to really be good. You know what I mean, brother?
Yeah, so in other words, God made Lucifer and one of his beautiful angels, but then Lucifer himself he created, this is not what I believe though, but the way it sounds like that, he created lust, envy, jealousy, and hate. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
I'm not saying that anyone created that. I'm saying that I'm not saying that, Lucifer created these things. No, these.
So the last thing I said to him was the sins. Lust, envy, jealousy, pride, gluttony, whatever these sins are, I can't see it. I can't see these sins. I can't even touch it. I can't feel, unless it has a host. Either it's a cherub or a human being. It has to find a host in order to see the act of that person. Right? Yeah, so hate, jealousy, envy, gluttony, lust, all these things that we can't see. And like I said, we can't see it unless it's in a cherub or a being, a human being. And then we can see the act of that human being or that cherub. Well, we can't see cherubs, right? But we can see human beings. And when they do an act, we can see if it's a sinful act, right? Because we judge, we human beings, we're going to always judge each other, right? And we can't see when they think it. So when I say sin as I could think and act, and to me it equals one sin. It equals the same sin. If I think it or I act upon it, it's still a sin to me. I feel, this is my opinion, I could be wrong, that all sin is created equal. All sin is created equal. So let's say you're going to the store and you steal something, right? And I'm just sitting in the car and I'm thinking of killing someone. You did an act going into the store and stealing, right? You're taking something from somebody else, right? And I'm thinking of killing someone. Well, rather you don't see me doing the act of killing and I'm thinking it, but you see the act of that man stealing, or it could be stealing or hurting somebody or whatever. It still equals out as a sin. You just can't see my thoughts, but you can see that man's actions. All right? So these things we can't see. I can't call it spirits because I think spirits is related to angels, right? But can you tell me that God, all sovereign, created lust, envy, hate, jealousy, gluttony, and lust and all? Can you tell me that he could put these inner feelings that we can't see, we can't touch, but put these inner, you're saying, or you telling me he's the beginning of that? That he started that he created these awful sins, right? Because if you're telling me that God created Lucifer for him to create all these things in him, because remember what Cooley said. He said, no man and angels are tainted. You might hear it not here in 3, but here in part 1 and part 2. And he said, no man and angels created evil, right? Men and angels created evil. This is what he said, right? But at the same time, I'm asking, well, if God created Lucifer, that means Lucifer created these sins. He's the beginning of the derivative of all these sins, right? That means God made him to create these sins. And he said, no, I'm not saying that. He's not saying that, well, Satan made these sins, right? So sometimes it comes off yes and a no, right? Because it all goes full circle again, right? But before we get into the theory and everything, right? Cooley was given some, because all we can work on as humans, okay, to be reality, to let reality set in, we got to go by choice and free will. And don't think I don't care about choice and free will. I really care about it. It's a big deal. Evil. And like I said, I just don't understand when I say I don't know, and no one's not going to get this answer until you die and you go up and you get all the answers, right? I just can't get with the ones that say they know. I just can't get with them. So then I know where to limit myself with certain talking and stuff like that, right? So now let's go into, and I'm just going to give you one example of choice and free will, right? And I'm going to let Cooley explain it. And then I'm letting the tape roll where we're talking about this Islam lady came on with her faith, and I got off. And she said, I wish he would have stayed on so we could talk this out, right? But I was gone already. I didn't know, what she was going to talk about. He didn't know she was in the background. So when she got on, it could have been about politics, and which it became politics after, and stuff like that. So let's move on to an example of choice and free will. And it's a good example with Cooley, and I want to stick this one out because Cooley gave you a good example, and it's family oriented. So let's just check it out.
What we choose from the physical aspect, and then it's about what we actually allow to influence us. I listen to hip hop music, and put it like this, brother. I have a brother. My brother spent most of his life in prison, right? And my other brothers, I'm different than all my brothers, but I'm the youngest. I have a little bit of all of them in me. They all did things that I've never done. I was born and raised in an area. Now, everyone has their own personal story where they didn't let negative influences impact them. And that's just what I'm saying. It's like people, they chose to let hip hop music, they chose to let gun violence, they chose to let being born and raised in the projects to really impact them. These things didn't have an impact. These things don't always have an impact on people. I don't cuss, drink, smoke, or do any of those things. But all my friends when I was growing up, they all did that. Why didn't I do it? It didn't impact me. I was on a different path. You get what I'm saying? And there's just some people that's like that. And then there's some people they're susceptible to certain influences. And that's all about the perception of how we perceive things because it's so unique. And that's what free will is about.
Yo, thanks a lot, Cooley, for letting me come in.
Of course, brother.
I've been here one time. I've been here. This is my second time. The last time I was about to get off. You was talking about relationships, and I told you it was over. I think you remember I said it's over. There's no going back to relationships. And at the end of the day, people are going to start using synthetic humans. Remember?
Oh, yeah, I remember you.
I told you my age.
Elon Musk making them bots.
Yeah, my age is 51, and I told you that my experience to relationships from decades to decades to decades, no one in their 20s and 30s or 40s, not that they can't tell me anything, but I see that women don't like men don't want the hassle, and this is entitled, and everything else is fast gratification, and no one really has the span to this. The word is compromise no more. The word is compromise. There's no more compromise between man and woman. And I would talk about simps at another time, but today I just wanted to ask you that question, brother, and just put me back on, man.
Yeah, I'll get you back on, man. It was a good discussion. You had some good theories, and I like discussions like that, man. But have a blessed one, man. I'll get some more people up.
All right, peace.
All right, chat. Anyone that wants to go ahead and join the stream, I see we do have some people in here. I'm going to go ahead and bring some people on up. But anyone that wants to join the stream, go ahead and click the first link in the description. I'll bring you on up. We get to talk about anything. Politics, dating and relationships. If you've seen some of my content and you disagreed with certain things, you can come on in. It's debate night, so anyone is welcome. Also, go ahead and get the likes up. We got a lot of Ninja Watchers in here. Go ahead and get the likes up. Like the podcast, man. All right, let's get the next person up. Hey, welcome to No Fugazi Podcast. State your name and where you're from.
My name is Atia, and I'm from New Jersey.
Atia, from Jersey. I'm from Jersey, too. What part are you from?
Atlantic City.
Atlantic City. Okay. What's up? Talk to me.
So I was listening to y'all's conversation, and I really just wanted to chime in a bit from a different perspective. And I felt like both of you guys were right in a sense, but from our teachings, I'm also Muslim, so I want to give you our version of the whole the devil Satan story.
Okay.
So as Muslims, we are taught that Satan, or Shaitan, Iblis as we call him, was not in fact an angel. That God has created another form of life, which is called the jinn. And if you can look them up. There is a lot of literature and stuff on the jinn. The angels.
You mean like the what we would call, researchers would call like the Anunnaki, stuff like that, or what?
I'm not too sure of that.
Not too sure? Okay, all right, but it's called the jinn.
Like how he created man, he created angels, he also created jinn.
Okay.
Jinn and angels were created prior to man.
All right.
And the angels were their primary reason for being is to serve God. They do not have free will. That's why you don't have a story of an angel who disobeyed God. The story with Iblis or Satan is that he was a jinn. Jinn has free will the same way man has free will. So when he created man and he told all of his angels and the jinn to bow to the creation of man, angels were created from light, jinn were created from fire, and man is created from clay or dust or earth, or and Iblis didn't bow. Every other creation bowed except for him. And he's like, why are you not bowing to my creation? And he said, because I'm better than he. He is created from clay and I'm created from fire. So out of his own arrogance, he just felt automatically that he was a superior being. So why should he bow to another creation? And God's take on it is, well, I created you. I created everybody. So how are you to say you're better than anything else? You're all of my hand. You are all of my creation.
Okay, I see that theory. I heard similar thoughts like that before. And we don't really know. Me and a brother, we was more discussing, going like to the root cause. He was.
So as you can see, I let it run, and that's the ending of it. But I did clip out something out of it, because the woman with Islam faith and Kuri, he's Christian, I believe so, right? And both of them agreed that I was giving Shaitan or Lucifer the power, and I'm like, what? If I'm trying to tell you that God is good all the time, and he has nothing to do with evil, and I'm separating it, right? I'm not saying that any of his creations that he made, just all of a sudden, overrule God's creation. It's impossible. That's impossible. And the reason why I say it's impossible is because I was brought up, conditioned to believe that God is all good. So I'm finding another way that this creation that God created to become evil is from somewhere else. And they're saying, I'm giving Shaitan. So I said, okay, hold up. We're going to do this in part 3 now. We're going to do this in part 4. So I'll introduce her and him, and I'll show you how it goes. But it was something that was really good. Like I said, right now, if we're born into evil, if we are born into sin, now we have the option of good and evil. If you was to tell me that God made good and evil in the first place, then just for us to have the option to pick and choose, this video won't be here in the first place. But the conflicting problem is, if you tell me he's sovereign and good at all times, and I believe that, and I was brought up and raised to believe that, and then on the other side, you're telling me one of his creations, no. Choice and free will is a label. It is not an explanation. So, but I do like, we got to work with free will and choice, because we're born into sin, and we get to pick and choose which direction we go and repercussions and blah, blah, blah. So I like when he said, 4 brothers, 8 brothers, 4 sisters. We all been through there, right? We all been through it. Where, now it depends. A lot of things come in consideration for this situation. Your mother and let's say we're working on a nuclear family, which we don't see as much anymore. That is rare, right? Everything else is the majority, okay? Everything else is a majority. Single mothers, okay? Single fathers, right? The nuclear family, that one, the one that comes together is rare. That's rare, okay? So when you have so many brothers and sisters and you're raised in a nuclear family, right? The baseline is the mother and the father and their morals and what you are taught and conditioned to learn. So if they dragging you to church and you don't want to go to church, but you dragging you and you'll listen to it subconsciously, even though you're twiddling your thumbs and your mind is all over the place, your subconscious picks up a lot of stuff, even if your critical factor is trying to not pick up stuff, okay? That's one. That's a fact, all right? So you could be born into church and not have a clue what's going on, but subconsciously you can hear pitch, tone, right? And the way the pastor is talking, right? And the rhythm of his the way he talks, right? Subconsciously. So, 4 brothers, 4 sisters, out of all the, let's say, 5 brothers, right? 3 walks in a great path. They go through life a certain way, right? And they avoid a lot of things that'll give them repercussions. The other two got to touch the flame numerous times. They need life to beat them upside their head, right? In order to understand that I didn't have to go all around the corner. All I had to do is do what I was supposed to do right here and now, just like my other brothers, my other three brothers, and everything would have been dandy. Everything would have been great. So we have choices and free will. Even if you're coming up with morals, right? We've seen it. Pastors with kids do the unthinkable and all this stuff like that. But at the end of the day, we have free choice and free will. No matter what you are taught, sometimes that person within wants to venture out and don't believe what they was taught. And why is it some don't venture out and walk a certain path to be in victory in life and be successful? Nobody knows that answer. All right. So like he said, he don't drink, he don't smoke, he don't cuss. I fly filth at times. I get mad. You know, I'm not perfect, but I'm going to let you know. I fly filth. I get pissed, especially of something that I feel is negative, and always get credit. I hate that. I hate when something that's not right and don't get credit. In other words, it's so easy to do the wrong thing. It's so easy to kick somebody in the back of their head, right, down the stairs. It's so easy to get mad, jump out the car and shoot somebody. It's more dedication and discipline to do the right thing. But doing the wrong thing, get praises. The right is wrong and the wrong is right. That's how we work now. Okay, well, that's how but it's amplified because now we can see within social media all the foolishness is going on and who is getting credit for foolishness and who's getting no credit for being simple and what they call lame, right? So I don't want to get into all that. But at the end of the day, that's a beautiful example. I'll keep it short. It's a beautiful example of brothers and sisters and, you know, they in the household. Now, you know, it depends on the mother and the father when they had their first, their middle, and their last child and the age of the parents and how much focus they have on their kids. Because sometimes when you're young, you're still out there and you're not really, you got to go through all the arguments and stuff like that. But the kids are watching how, see the thing that's rare about kids that's in a nuclear family, if they have a healthy nuclear family where the father and mother, they get in arguments, but they know how to calm that down. They learn that, right? But they all not learn that because remember, they individuals, and as they get older, they might not act the way their parents act to stay together for 30 years, right? Every individual is different. Every individual is different. So, you know, at the end, let me give you an example. Check this out. Because this video is almost done because it's almost 30 minutes, so maybe it is already. But let me say this. And you're going to tell me, see, it's all about perception, right? Let me give you an example. When Adam and Eve, when God gave them a command and told them don't eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, right? That was to make sure that they know that I gave you a command, don't disobey. Now, God didn't have to give them any knowledge of what would happen to them because you would surely die, right? But in my mind, it's like, if they don't know nothing about good and evil, right? What was their life before good and evil, right? And do they know anything about surely dying if they don't know the repercussions of dying, right? And most people, when they hear something like you will surely die, most people, when they first pick up the Bible, they'll probably say, oh, they will die like physically. No, it's a spiritually they will die, right? I think Adam lived to 933 years old and then he died. But if he never touched the knowledge of good and evil and just stay under the tree of life, he would have been living forever. Okay? So, you know, they make these, they portray these pictures of how the Garden of Eden was before the disobeyed God for doing what he shouldn't have been doing, Adam and Eve. and they show pictures of animals together. No one's trying to hunt each other and eat each other. They show they show all these portraits and pictures how the Eden's supposed to look like. So my mind said, if you are in that realm where you never get sick, you never get diseases, you can live forever, you don't have no knowledge of good and evil, okay, how do you know the repercussions of dying? Okay, I'm going to give you an example of perception, all right? So you ever heard this saying, there's no good people for bad things to happen. Now, what's going to happen to you when I say this? You're going to look up, down, left to right, depending on where you look for knowledge in your brain. Your eyeballs are going to go that way. Or you might just stay still and say, what? I'm going to say it again. And then I'm going to show you a picture of it so you could put it in your head, right? You can see it with sentences. There are no good people for bad things to happen. Now watch that. Okay, so how did you take that? There's two ways to take it, right? All right, so you could take it the physical way, or you could take it the spiritual way. And it depends on what you're raised, and what's your morals, and what you think about that statement. So I would give it to you the physical way. The physical way is this. I don't understand, why would you say that? There's no good people. My father was a good person. My mother was a good person. My mother was the best person alive, right? Now, every individual might feel that way, right? The physical, because we as humans, we judge people in the way they move, right? If they're a good person, that means, they stretch out their hand to help and stuff like that, and they're always there to help you and never have an answer no, or they always find a way to make things happen, right? Or there was just somebody in your life that did good things to people around them, surrounding them, and let off a certain energy, right? They say, man, that was a good person, right? And then sometimes you could have someone that's good in someone else's eyes and end up being a serial killer. You know what I'm saying? So that's the perception, right? But that's one. That's the physical. Now the spiritual is that there are no good people for bad things to happen to. Now, this is the way I see it. And I believe it's true. But the physical is always fighting the spiritual. So in other words, if I tell somebody that has really no morals and they don't understand where I'm coming from, the first thing they're going to do is they're going to think of it as a physical way. But I think as a spiritual way, because I was raised and conditioned, right? And there's nothing wrong to being conditioned for something that's true to your heart, and it gives good morals. Okay, there's nothing wrong with that. All right, it puts you on a straight path, whether if you think it's wrong or right, or it's not the right religion. It's the behind what it means. Being a good person, good deeds, right? That's what it means, right? Having good deeds, doing people, trying to not get angry at everything, right? And just have a good spirit around people. Always have a smile on your face. Just be vibrant and nice, right? And when I see this, I say it's a truth that there's no good people for bad things to happen to. And the reason why I say that, because I was raised to say we was born into sin. And people always say, I don't know why that happened to that person. Why they took my baby. My little baby was just born. And all of a sudden, my baby came with autism and retardation, or came out crippled. And why, God? Why did you do this to me? Why are you putting all this burden on me? You did. Hey. You did that, God. You remember what Adam said to God? God, you gave me this woman to cause all these problems. You gave me this woman to cause all these issues. She disobeyed, I didn't. But as we know, Adam was his first simp, because he listened to her instead of listening to God. And the serpent knew that he couldn't get to Adam. So he got to Eve. And Eve got to Adam. Okay. So in my mind, we are born into sin. That means nobody, no baby that just got born, devastation of weather, conditions, it doesn't matter. Death is upon everybody. Do you hear what I'm saying? Death is upon everybody. So when I hear people blame God, I'm like, why are you blaming God? God put Jesus on the cross, his son, in human flesh form. He didn't deserve that, to die for your sins and your salvation. And you worrying about a baby? And you worrying about why? And I always say, why is a letter with a long tail? You're never going to get the answers. But I can tell you one thing, if God's son was crucified for being righteous, there's nothing better than that. There's nothing better than that. Listen, there's a couple ways that I want to die. Okay? I want to die standing for what I believe in, and that's right. Righteousness. Death before bondage. I'll tell you that. When it comes to righteousness, I will die for that. And let me ask you a question. How would you like to die? Let's be honest. How would you like to die? I know this is going a little bit long, but how would you like to die? Would you like to get a gunshot to the brain? Would you like to get stabbed numerous times? Would you like to be pelted on the floor with boots and stones and beat up? No one wants to die a violent way. Ain't that something? Everybody want to play a part like they all that, right? But at the end of the day, nobody want to die that way. I can tell you, I didn't even do the statistics, but I can tell you how people want to die, because I'm going to tell you how I would like to die. Hold on. Yeah, it was a fire truck. But I'll tell you how I would like to die, right? And I feel that a lot of people would like to die this way also. Not from jumping off a roof, not from none of that violence. You don't want to die that way. I either want to die in my sleep, or I would love to die growing old. Growing old and just die in my sleep. That's the honest truth. Now, if you're one of those people, you want to die from a gunshot wound, you want to, hey, we got, nothing is new under the sun. It existed. So if you want to die a violent way, hey, there you go. Die a violent way. But I'll tell you, the majority of people would rather die old, and some people don't want to even get old, right? Because they don't want to be a burden, right? But you either you die old and in your sleep, and that's a peaceful way of going. It's better than going in a car suicidal with carbon monoxide. Listen, we're talking about reality, and that's basically it. I feel, this is my opinion, that people would rather die growing old peacefully in they sleep where they don't feel nothing. That's the majority of people, and that's a fact. All this extra stuff that people do when they're alive, right? They're just playing a part, and they feel like they have to show off their badness, all right? But if I'm telling you you're born into sin, then you're no better than Jesus Christ, that was crucified for your sins, okay? Crucified for your sins when you was born into sin. And this is how I was conditioned to think, right? Whether it was right or wrong to you, at the end of the day, my baseline is I'm trying to do good. That's it. Well, the flying of the filth and sometimes going a little nutty, my mother is bipolar. She died, alcohol and alcohol cirrhosis. My father's still alive. I take care of him. He's 81 years old and he's schizophrenic. So I do have a lot to work with. You know what I'm saying? But it's okay. It's all good. It's a part of life. I'll get into that some other time. But I see it in the spiritual more than I see it in the physical. So when people say, I don't know why this happened to me, God, why this? I already know why it happened to you. It happened to the good ones physically, and it happens to the bad ones. It is what it is. It is what it is. So I'm not here to change your mind. I'm here for you to read between the lines. It's not what they say, it's what they're not saying. I mix the lies with the truth and the truth with the lies. But at the end of the day, you love lies and you hate the truth. Now, I'm going to do part 4 because this is getting a little bit long and I don't want to, your attention span, like I said, Gen Z and millennials. Millennials are 12 seconds. Gen Z is 8 seconds. So I might be just rambling. All right. So part 4, as you can see in this part, you see the Muslim lady. So you see me getting to the end now. We're not going to be talking about free will and choice no more. But that was a good example from Cooley, showing that you could be brought up in one household and everybody venture different ways. Some succeed and some don't. That's why you see Cain and Abel. You see what the story about that was, right? And people being jealous. There's no exception with human beings. I don't know if you're your brother, your sister, your blood, whatever it is. Jealousy and envy runs rampant. I'm talking about rampant. All right? Sorry about that, somebody I know. But you have one life. But within that one life, you do change. Either you change for the good or the worse, right? And you go through different stages in one lifetime. Yeah, because your mindset changed, right? But at this age, I symbolize a tiger because I already see the end game. I see the end game. I see my father every day. I change his pampers. I do this. Everybody got a story. Pay attention. But at the end of the day, you're going to be alone. So you better get used to it. Even if you marry, somebody got to go first. Even if you're born with a twin, y'all not going to die the same day, right? So I learned to be by myself at this older age, okay? I love being by myself. I can sit down all day and entertain myself with my brain, okay? I don't need to be a pride around me. I am a tiger. And that's why you see that symbol, caps in full G, and you see that tiger. I stand alone. Because I don't want people, especially at this age, my mind is already focused. I am not, no one infiltrated me with their nonsense, okay? And putting stuff on me to be infiltrated, my mind, okay? There's only a couple of things that's going on in my mind at 51. My health is my wealth, then my money, right? What else? Oh, my time is more important than anything, and I don't want to waste it with just anybody, right? And sex. Just being honest, good, healthy sex. So those are basic things that all I want at this time, because at 50 becomes 60, 60 becomes 70. So my time, my sex, my health is my wealth, and my money. That's all that matters. Anything else is uncivilized to me. It don't make any sense. All right. So to the next one, we're gonna go to the 4. Because we still have a lot to go through with this, with the desire of sin. And we're going to go through it with part 4 because the lady's going to tell me about the faith of Islam and how she sees things and the way she was raised and what she knows. So we're going to go into that in part 4. So hopefully you'll be there. Like I said, I don't care about nothing. This is where I vent. I'm not asking you for anything. Not asking for anything. I just vent. This is for me. I could leave a little, like I usually say in my other videos, I leave a little ish stain on this earth with me talking. So maybe my bloodline can see how I think. And maybe they might think the same thoughts that I have and they align with it. At the end of the day, that's what I'm going for now. I'm not caring about being famous. I hate being famous. I don't care about it. It is what it is. If you press, you press. If you don't, just stay tuned for part 4. And we can have fun with this. All right, 1.